Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, siege of Gazan civilians continues as Israel announces a troop drawdown as more of top Israeli officials admit ethnic cleansing agenda. Meanwhile, the Israeli Supreme Court overturns Netanyahu's judicial reform package, which spurred so many of the protests the first half of 2023. In this country, the Biden administration bypasses Congress again to send more weapons to Israel. And the 2024 election begins in earnest with Biden underperforming amongst some of its most important groups. Trump set to appeal Colorado ballot ban at the Supreme Court as soon as today. New York Governor Hochul, in a sop to Wall Street, vetoes a bill that would have banned non-compete clauses. Russia unleashes missile barrage aimed at Ukrainian civilian targets. Sealed court filings about Jeffrey Epstein to be released starting today. National Labor Relations Board pushes its rollout of joint employer rule to February 26th. And 2023 officially saw record drop in homicides. What? Reagan federal appeal judge allows for a state-run court to gain jurisdiction of Jackson, Mississippi, a majority black run and inhabited city. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to 2024. It is
Newsday, Tuesday, I think at least.
Oh, I thought today was Monday.
No.
Did I say Monday at the beginning of the show? Did I say Monday?
I was so impressed.
I was so focused on 2024 that I think I may have said Monday.
It feels like Monday.
Maybe I said Tuesday, but in my head I said...
It feels like Monday on steroids. It's like one of those days where I feel like my brain is way behind. So
Totally.
If I say some words wrong, please allow for, some grace. Oh,
Did I say Tuesday? All right. Well, there
All
you
right.
go. All right. I said Tuesday.
Did you write it down?
I did. I had it written down.
There you
Doesn't
go.
Matter. Folks, thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed those best ofs that we had last week. So welcome back. Hope you had a good holiday, whatever holiday you celebrated, and a good New Year, even if you didn't celebrate a New Year. I didn't go crazy on any of those days.
Worst holiday.
Although,
I mean, if you're the general in the war on Christmas, I'm the general in the war against New Year's. It's just like, especially here, it's so expensive to get anywhere. I don't want to leave my apartment. I mean, Times Square, total nonsense. Just don't leave your house.
Not being out and trying to get back to your apartment at like 12:30 a.m. or 1 is the best.
I gave that up pre-pandemic, going to any event for New Year's. I'm going to stay in.
I went out for the first time in ages because generally I do think it's amateur hour, but I ended up going to a bar that some friends of mine that were gathering at, and I was fine And then right at the end, for whatever reason, like somebody had they were giving out little glasses of Prosecco. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, I decided to have like the 4 glasses that other people did not have.
Yeah.
And I had a headache for about half the day. Yes,
Lots of sugar in Prosecco.
Huge mistake that I will never, ever make again. But aside from that, thanks for joining us, folks. Let's get into it. I mean, basically, we are starting off and this happens quite a bit. I think this is I've been doing this now for 20 years and started more or less in almost 20 years ago as of April 1st this year. It'll be 20 years in the run-up to the Bush Kerry election of 2004. And at that time, I felt like this election could very well define the trajectory of the country for decades. And I sort of, in retrospect, I stand by that assertion because, things would be, I think, very different today had John Kerry won that election. I think it would have ended the war on terror, I think, a little bit earlier, but at least the mentality, if only because the Republican Party would have been in opposition and it would have created a different dynamic. Democrats were as weak as they are today about a lot of things. They were weaker then. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. But this one feels like it is a bookend to that 2004 one. It is quite clear what Donald Trump has, in terms of his own agenda, aside from where the Republican Party has gone and what their agenda will be, and essentially getting rid of the concept of civil service, or an attempt to do so, packing positions that have been otherwise filled by technocrats or scientists or people who are genuinely concerned about the efficacy of agencies that are set up to protect our food supply, our environment. None of these things function in the way that I would like them to, without a doubt. But when they are stripped of the earnest individuals who work in those agencies, things can get a lot worse. And here is Fox News trying to set up the idea that, because Donald Trump is going to be facing multiple court cases this year.
Yeah.
Starting within a day or two about whether he can be on the ballot, qualify for the ballot because of his involvement in the January 6th insurrection, which, as recently as a month ago, 2 weeks ago, we heard in the final investigation as to the permitting of that day that they knew, the people applying for the permit knew that Donald Trump was going to lead people to the Capitol building, despite the fact that they were claiming that was not going to happen. So there's a lot of evidence there. Now, that said, Trump has never been convicted of the insurrection, but I don't know if necessarily Congress contemplated that you need to be convicted of of the insurrection in a criminal case. It could just simply be a finding by a judge. I don't know if people were convicted of participating in the Civil War.
Right.
What that Clause 3 of the 14th Amendment was designed for. Nevertheless, Donald Trump could theoretically end up in jail by the end of the year. I don't think that's going to happen, but Fox and friends are getting out ahead of it. This is outnumbered, excuse me.
And you were seeing a lot of this in the media, probably by media that's adversarial to Trump, is that the thing that's working against him is drama. A lot of the voters want to get past the drama. They just want to go on to a candidate that they feel comfortable with. I think that's a misconception. I think a lot of Republican, especially primary voters, are reacting to the drama and saying these prosecutions are selective. This Colorado nonsense shouldn't stand. It's splitting the country, and I'm going for him. So, I know it's a point that Joe Rogan's made, Bill Maher, and others who tend to be on the left, which is that you're feeding into his narrative. And that's why I still think it's his to lose. And I think that by the time we get through the first three and we get to Super Tuesday, it's going to be Donald Trump likely left standing.
All right. So what happens if he's indicted at some point?
He can be president from jail if he has to. But I think to your point, Paul, despite all of the threats, despite all the charges, Republicans are still rallying around Donald Trump. Now, even if they stoop so low out of fear and desperation because they have no other choice, they have no other nominee other than Biden, they know that he's going to end up being the nominee. They're taking all these actions. Look at the FBI raid in Mar-a-Lago, trying to kick him off the Colorado ballot. These frivolous charges by our district attorney here in New York and in Georgia. But I think it comes down, yes, in 2 weeks, the Iowa caucus. This is going to be the first major electoral event where voters have the opportunity to express their preference for presidential candidate. And if they perform well, that might give them momentum. That might, possibly influence subsequent primaries and might possibly mold the trajectory of their campaign. So let's see what that shows.
I mean, at this point, in terms of president.
I mean, I love the idea that all of these court cases, the very disparate cases, are coordinated somehow by a they in like some type of central command office. But
the globalists.
But nevertheless, I mean, the former cop and whoever the number one on the couch of outnumbered is
Dr. Jeanette Neshawat.
Dr. Jeanette.
The doctor. I think they're right in terms of the way that Republican voters are reacting to Trump. Washington Post has a poll that shows that 3 years after the January 6th attack, Republicans are more sympathetic to those who stormed the U.S. Capitol and more likely to absolve Donald Trump of responsibility for the attack than they were in 2021. I mean, this, and the polling goes on to show it's not dramatic, 5 or 6, 7, 8 points, but certainly that's the trend. And that's just simply a function of, I think, how sealed the media bubble is for these people, because you've had now 2 or 3 years of relentless downplaying of that attack on the Capitol, regardless of whether you think it was, Keystone cops or not. There was a new report that just came out over the past couple of days as to the involvement that the second dumbest senator in the country, Ron Johnson, had, because the reason why the electors, he apparently, there were 2 electors that their ballots got lost in the mail. And he had to sort of figure out how to hand deliver it to Vice President Pence.
Yeah, I mean, they're right in a sense, or I guess Morrow, the former cop, is right that the Republicans like the drama. I mean, I've always contended that I think a big part of Trump's appeal to Republican voters is triggering the libs. Like, the more outrageous he is, the more he pisses off, the blue-haired people in their minds, the more they're going to be in favor of him, a certain segment of the Republican base, but not all. But that's not really the question about the general election. Yeah. I mean, the thing, it's a separate question. The most regular people don't like the drama of the Trump administration. That's why Biden's return to normalcy pitch actually had salience. The reason Biden's poll numbers are so dismal right now is in part due to his own failings, probably a big chunk of it, but also because Trump has not been visible for most people for a long period of time. And we have really, really short memories. Look at how George W. Bush has been what his poll numbers were when he left office, and now how he's viewed by the public because he gave Michelle Obama a piece of candy or something. Like, people have short memories. They need to be reminded of what it was like in those Trump years.
But nobody was ever under the impression that Republicans were the ones upset with the drama.
Yeah, right.
No, they've loved it every second of it. They're like people with a canceled TV show that they want to come back.
We will we'll dig into some of those numbers in a moment, and then we'll also catch you up on the latest in the assault on Gaza. Tomorrow we'll have Trita Parsi on to talk about the chances of this. Again, we spoke to him a couple months ago about this, but the potential for this to widen. Israel has announced a troop withdrawal of, I think it was 5 brigades, which could be anywhere from 10 to 25,000 troops, depending on the size of those brigades. And there's some speculation, particularly just before we came on air, there was a reported explosion in Beirut. It's unclear what that was, but there's some talk that was a strike on Hamas leadership in Beirut. Some people are speculating that it's possible that Israel is trying to gear up for an incursion into Lebanon. We'll talk to Trita Parsi about that tomorrow. In the meantime, a word from our sponsor. Does it make sense that the same company who controls half of online retail also passively eavesdrop on your private conversations at home? What about the idea that a single company controls 90% of internet searches, runs your email service, and gets to track everything you do on your smartphone? Big tech is more powerful than most countries are, and they profit by exploiting your personal data. You know the old saying, if it doesn't cost you anything, then you are the product. It's time to put a layer of protection between you and your online activity from these tech juggernauts. And that's just one of the reasons why I use ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is the easiest way to browse safely, securely, and frankly, just better. Right now, go to expressvpn.com/majority and get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Think about how much of your life is on the internet. Every site you visit, every video you watch, every message you send gets tracked and data mined. But when you run ExpressVPN on your device, the software hides your IP address. And that's something that, and as you know, the IP address is the way that tech basically could personally identify you, or at the very least, start, sending you all sorts of specific targeted ads. If you want to escape that, ExpressVPN makes your activity harder to trace and harder to sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also 100% encrypts your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers on your network. And it also, just in case you're wondering, allows you to set where your internet service seems to be coming from for places like Netflix, and you could even actually, different shopping sites, get different prices on these things. You can see shows that aren't available in this country, like Australian Survivor, for instance. All of that. I don't know why I have to whisper it. I mean, people know that, but I don't know. I still have a mentality of like back in the Napster days. But the point is, ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET, Wired, TechRadar, and countless others. And the thing that I like the best about ExpressVPN is it is, I don't want to say it's 100% idiot-proof because that would reflect poorly on me, but it is 100% idiot-proof. You download the app on your phone, you can download it on your computer, you tap with one button, and you are protected. Easy peasy. Stop handing over your personal data to the big tech monopoly that mines your activity and sells your info. Protect yourself with the VPN I trust to keep me safe online. Visit expressvpn.com/majority. That's expressvpn.com/majority to get 3 extra months free. Go to expressvpn.com/majority right now to learn more. Okay, let's get into some of these polling numbers. We are now 13 days away. I guess it's going to be on Monday, right? It's on MLK Day. The Iowa, is it a primary or is it a caucus. For the Republicans? it's going to be on Martin Luther King Day, and it's caucus, and that's going to be essentially. It's not going to be quite nail in the coffin time because there is a desperate attempt to make it seem like Nikki Haley has some type of campaign momentum. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it has to do with her being VP. That the Republican establishment desperately wants someone there to, at least, essentially spy on Donald Trump. Honestly, I think that's a big part of it. Big babysitter. Let's just look into some of this polling, and then we'll get to some of the Nikki. Well, let's get to this Nikki Haley thing. Here's Nikki Haley. She had a tough time over the break, trying to sort of thread this needle between how do I appeal to 95% of the Republican voters who are all bat crap crazy,
right?
But also sound like I'm not a lunatic to the establishment media because that is my entire my brand proposition value or whatever it is, core brand proposition. So here she is. She is at a town hall in Berlin, New Hampshire. She expects not to win Iowa and we're only talking about Ron DeSantis here, but really New Hampshire is where she really wants to, I think, make her stand.
Open primaries, more moderate state.
Exactly. And but here she is trying to not be a Republican lunatic.
Please, what was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically...
How is that not the easiest question in the world?
That's the amazing thing that she actually comes right out and says, I'm terribly nervous about answering this question.
Exactly. And you can hear her pause and her voice shake. That's the thing that made me laugh about this, but you can start over.
She was a diplomat to the UN, and this is a hard question. Can you please explain the reason we got into a civil war 160 years ago? Is it really that sensitive?
Can you explain what color grass is and what color the sky is?
Well, I mean, that's even trickier
really
because
question.
You need to tell me what month it is. Because if you're in the Northeast and it's like, say, August, it's brown.
I guess you're right. That's a trickier question.
It is a trickier question, but all right, go ahead.
Please, what was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do.
To do what?
What do you think the cause of the Civil War was? I'm sorry?
I'm not running for president. I want to see your view on the cause of the Civil War.
I mean, I think it always comes down to the role of government. We need to have capitalism. We need to have economic freedom. We need to make sure that we do all things so that individuals have the liberties so that they can have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do or be anything they want to be without government getting in the way. What do you want me to say about slavery? Next question.
He says you answered my question.
Okay, so he says it's amazing to me that in the year 2023, and we cut out part of her answer, right? I mean, that's a clip of her answer. It shortened it. I don't know how long it shortened it, but I mean, does it matter? How do you get through that question and have the guy say, it's amazing to me in 2023 that you can't say that the Civil War was about slavery? She didn't even put it down on the list. Never mind the top of the list. She didn't even put it on the list. And she's like, what do you want me to say about slavery?
It is amazing because one, you know, to in the sequencing of the primaries, right? She thinks her best shot is in New Hampshire. But in New Hampshire, that's not going to necessarily fly with like the big kind of independent coalition. I mean, I remember covering the primary before COVID hit in 2020, and I went to a Biden event, and there were a lot of moderate Republicans there just checking him out to speak, because it's just a different kind of political environment in New Hampshire for this primary process. And so that guy's probably someone who thinks of himself as an independent, or maybe somebody who might consider somebody else. And, you know, it's a northern state. They're not going to have the same reaction there. So she was caught in a bind between what we always talk about, the Republican base that really drives the engine of things, and the practical realities of her candidacy and how she can get any kind of toehold in, you know, being the number 2 in this race. So, it was funny.
On Wednesday, she is in, I've been corrected, it's Berlin, New Hampshire.
Sorry.
And now, on Thursday of last week, she's in North Conway, New Hampshire, and she is trying to dig herself out of a little bit of a hole. Now, of course, here she's at a place where they have books, so she's got to be extra careful about what she says about major historical events. Here we go.
Last night I was asked about the Civil War and what I think of the Civil War, what was the cause of the Civil War. Of course the Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned, always the case. We know the Civil War was about slavery. But it was also more than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual. It was about the role of government. For 80 years, America had the decision and the moral question of whether slavery was a good thing and whether government, economically, culturally, any other reasons, had a role to play in that. By the grace of God, we did the right thing and slavery is no more. But the lessons of what the bigger issue with the Civil War are is that let's not forget what came out of that, which is government's role, individual liberties, freedom for every single person, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do and be anything you want to be without anyone or government getting in your way. That should be the goal of what we always try and take away from that.
Okay. This is astonishing. So what happens is somebody says, Nikki, it looks bad that you didn't even mention slavery as a cause of the war. Not the top cause, not the last cause, not the middle cause, none of the cause. So go out there and try and fashion something. And so she goes out there and she says, like, no, of course, like, slavery was such a part of the Civil War that I didn't even need to include it in my answer before.
It's actually boring to mention
It's so obviously, and the thing is, they know it's out there. So this corrective is for the people who aren't going to follow up on this stuff anyways. But the amazing thing about this is that, no, the Second Amendment did not come out of the wake of the Civil War. That actually didn't. Neither did the First Amendment. Right. Those existed prior to the Civil War. What came out of the Civil War were the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that were explicitly about a more activist government role, not less.
Yeah.
Explicitly about actually race-based solutions to changing the dynamic in the country. It was specifically about more aggressive involvement by the government in establishing things like public schools, et cetera, et cetera. And the amazing thing about this is it was Republicans who did it. She could have touted in the fact that it was Republicans who did it.
Right.
Yeah, and what is the government's role in securing individual rights? It's, well, like, should they fight a war against the slave-owning class that basically started the conflict to secure its own freedoms, as you say?
Yeah.
But it's funny, like, you look at, like, DeSantis is like, yikes. It looks like Nikki Haley has some problems with American history. Not that difficult to identify and acknowledge the role slavery played in the Civil War. Donald Trump also saying, Nikki, the answer is slavery, period. It's very funny to watch these guys who are who basically have the neo-Confederate or crypto-Confederate vote in hand also preen about that.
Hey, DeSantis instituted a curriculum in Florida that basically said what her first answer was. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how many times have you heard Donald Trump talk about like the 1776 project versus the evil 1619 project or whatever? I like when she says it's primarily about the freedom of the individuals. Yeah, I mean, like mostly about the freedom of black people. Like from chattel slavery, but then she tries
as compared to the freedom of slave owners.
It's the ability for slave owners to own those people. So those things are a little bit in contradiction when we're talking about freedoms. It's the individual freedom for everybody. On one side, you have the individual freedom of people to not be property. On the other side, you have the individual freedom of people to make them property. And the Civil War was about that, about freedom for everybody to do what they wanted. Now, Nikki, unfortunately, those two things are a bit incompatible.
But the reason why we show this is to show how really nuts the base of the Republican Party is. And the base, by the base, I mean, like it's a bigger base, really, if you define it as people who are going to participate in the primaries, in the level of enthusiasm on the Republican side. Because to have to walk a tightrope that causes you not to mention the word slavery when you answer the question as to what was the Civil War about.
Right.
And even like all the people say, well, slavery was a second order issue. It was about economics. She couldn't even say that. Which of course is total BS, but she couldn't even say the word slavery. For fear.
It's just about ideas.
For fear of being labeled some type of liberal or,
bit woke.
Wokist or whatever it is. It's fascinating. Let's play one more clip involving Nikki Haley. And then we'll move on to these poll numbers that aren't terribly encouraging for Joe Biden. Here is Steve Bannon, the former Trump advisor, probably current Trump advisor, with the white supremacy, would you call him, Jack Posobiec? Very sort of, very excited about whiteness. Also, that guy seems to have straightened up his life after he was found on Bumble cheating on his partner.
I wonder how that FBI investigation into who was impersonating him on Bumble.
Yeah, that was weird.
Still
I never
pending.
heard. I never got an update on that.
The deep state is not going to look into it.
It's probably Fauci.
Yeah. Should also say this is the guy I guess that Cernovich hired to go through my tweets back in the day and get me fired. That didn't work.
Thanks for that.
But now he's wearing a sport coat, and he's with Steve Bannon, and they are talking about Nikki Haley's run, essentially, for vice president. And here is Steve Bannon.
Forget Republican and Democrat. Those are, if you're thinking in those terms, you're thinking of old politics. This is populist nationalism versus elite globalism. And if you see Republicans that are not in our camp, they're by and large elite globalists, the Mitt Romneys of the world, the people in the Senate, right? The
Nikki
Kevin McCarthy,
Haley.
neocon Nikki, neoliberal. No, listen, Nikki Haley's biggest donors right now are some of the most radical anti-Trump Democrats.
What did you think?
Reid Hoffman.
What did you think when Jamie Dimon came out at the New York Times summit?
She'd be a great president.
And said she'd be a great president, and we've all got to back her.
One of the fights we're going to have, a big fight, will take place in the spring, will be they're going to try to force Nikki on the ticket. They say Trump needs a woman, Nikki on the ticket, she balances thing, and she can bring together that 15% of never-Trumpers in the Republican Party. We're going to have that fight. If Nikki Haley is in this administration in any capacity, it will fail. Well, she's a viper. She's a viper, and once she gets in there, she'll try to run it as prime minister. She'll try to be Dick Cheney. Her to Trump will be just like Dick Cheney to Bush. That's what she'll try to do.
Steve, I have to ask you, because Richard Barris issued a warning about this, a very specific warning, and he went even further. Barris's warning was this. He said, you put her in as vice president, and they will find someone to Lee Harvey Oswald Trump, get him out of there, and make her the president in his stead. And he said if she becomes VP, that guarantees they're going to take a shot at him.
I got to tell you, we have to put on the table, because Robert Kagan, one of the senior most thinkers in the neocon, vertical, the husband.
There's a lot of columnists at the Washington Post.
Right.
Robert Kagan.
Yeah, it looks like Bannon didn't want to. I don't want to subscribe to the that she's being put on as a way of setting Trump up for assassination.
For Lee Harvey Oswaldization. The Viper Haley thing. Like, I don't like Nikki Haley. I do think her positions on war are horrendous and terrifying. That she could maybe be the next president. But the idea that she represents a singular sort of threat that they should all get behind. It's like. She's just useful as an icon for you, I think, basically, because the idea that Trump's going to get in office and not hire hundreds of Nikki Haleys to staff his administration. That's what he did the first time, and that's what he'll do the next time.
He's calling him a neocon. I mean, John Bolton was in the administration.
Exactly.
The number one person I think of when I think of neoconservative is John Bolton. It's all about aesthetics, right? And I guess she's just a little too close to the Republican establishment, so she's a globalist.
I also think there may be other aesthetics that might be an issue for him on the ticket. I mean, because it becomes a lot harder. Yeah, it becomes a lot harder to. Nikki Haley runs into this problem, but it becomes a lot harder to run an anti-black and brown, anti-immigrant, their replacing us campaign if you literally have a second-generation immigrant who's brown in office, regardless of how much she runs from that.
I mean, apparently she once listed herself as white on her voter registration I saw over the weekend. It's a little bit like that's what she's trying to...
Yeah. But again, it's an aesthetics.
Yes.
And, Donald Trump up there, I think they're afraid that will... because I don't think her existence on a ticket is enough for, to the extent that there are anti-Trumpers out there in the Republican Party to go oh, well, at least Nikki Haley's there. She'll be able to corral him any more than, Mike Pence was.
Exactly.
Let's talk about this because there's new polling out from Suffolk and USA Today, which I think really captures, and it's early, obviously, but, we keep saying it's early and then it gets later.
These are maybe the worst numbers I've seen yet for Biden.
They're the worst numbers, but I think what they show is the real dynamic that is going on here. There is in this poll, I got it right here. I got two different polls here. USA Today, Suffolk University poll. Biden's failures to consolidate support in key parts of the coalition that elected him in 2020 has left him narrowly trailing Trump, the likely Republican nominee, 39 to 37%. 39 to 37. That's you've got an extant of over 20, almost 25% of the population is not weighed in on that, and that's because 17% support an unnamed third-party candidate. Now, 39-37% is essentially a tie. Mm-hmm. And, in terms of the margin of error. But what's interesting here is that Biden has lost support, but he has not lost it to Trump. He has lost it, at least in this poll, to unnamed third-party candidates. When 7 candidates are specified by name, I don't have all those 7 in front of me. And I imagine they're not all going to be on the ballot in different places. Trump lead inches up another 3 percentage points, or I should say up to 3 percentage points from 2 to 37 to 34%, with Robert F. Kennedy at the top of the third-party candidates at 10%. And so what you're looking at is Biden bleeding support not to Trump, but to third-party candidates. Now, my sense is generically that is not great news for Biden, but it's relatively good news, because to lose the support to Trump would be a lot harder of a fight, it seems to me, than to lose it to a third party candidate. Because if they're voting for a third party candidate, they don't like Trump either. And the closer you get to the elections, when you start to see some numbers go up on, in a general election, in terms of polling, I think it becomes clear to those people who are voting for that third party candidate that they will be electing Trump in that instance. Because I don't think there's many people defecting from Trump at this point. Trump's voters are there.
Yeah.
They are as psyched as they've ever been. In fact, I think there is an enthusiasm, and I'm not quite clear what enthusiasm, I need to see how that question is. In the poll, 44% of Trump supporters describe themselves as a 10 on a thermometer measuring enthusiasm. Now, I don't know if that means, are you enthused about voting for this person? Or are you enthused about voting in the election and you're voting for Trump? Among Biden supporters, fewer than half that number, 18%, calls them a 10. But it's not inconceivable to me that there's people who are a lot more enthused about voting against Trump than they are enthused about voting for Biden. And it doesn't, at the end of the day, if I vote for Biden, it doesn't matter if I do it with one hand holding my nose or if I'm doing it with a Biden flag in the other hand. The point is, who am I going to vote for when I get there? But I think what you glean from this is it is not Trump who is losing support as much to third-party candidates as Joe Biden is. And I think as we get closer to that election, it is an easier sell to people. Like, understand, Bobby Kennedy is not going to be the next president at 10%.
Yeah.
He's not, that's not going to happen.
But this plays into also, just to add to your point, what we said earlier, that Trump's been as invisible as he's been in a long time in the public eye, with everything going on in Gaza and with, him not participating in the Republican debates, for example. So I think these numbers will narrow once he has to be out there more. But it still is. It's immensely concerning.
Nikki Haley, 40 minutes ago, with only 3 candidates qualifying for the CNN debate, it's time for Donald Trump to show up. As the debate stage continues to shrink, it's getting harder for Donald Trump to hide.
It's absolutely not in his interest.
Candidate?
Yeah.
Who was it? Who were the third candidates?
It's him, DeSantis, and Trump is what she said. Oh.
No.
Oh, a third candidate.
Oh, Trump
That's
being
it?
that person.
Yep.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
People who have qualified are her, DeSantis, and Trump. No one
All
else
right, fair
has.
enough.
Yeah.
Save us from the DeSantis-Haley face-off.
Yeah.
Now, this is, according to this poll, Biden now claims the support of just 63% of black voters, a precipitous decline from the 87% he carried in 2020. I find it hard to believe. And again, Trump's black voter numbers has stayed completely static. So these voters are basically saying, at this point, I'm not voting for Biden. I may vote for a third party, but they're also saying I'm not going to vote for Trump. I find it hard to believe that of that 87 to 63% drop, 24 percentage points, that a lot of those people aren't going to come back. And actually, when you get closer to the election, aren't going to vote for Biden. Frankly.
And can I ask, are these likely voters?
This is 1,000 people, likely voters.
Right.
Again, we don't know how they're determining that, but these are, you take these polls as part of a larger trend. There's nothing in this poll that is, although that number seems big to me, again, the 24% drop. There's nothing in these polls that are wildly different from the trends that we've been seeing in other places. But again, I think it's, we'll see.
The thing that alarmed me is that the Hispanic vote numbers, that's pretty precipitous. And the voters under 35, that's right below that.
Yeah, supposedly Trump now leads them 37 to 33%. Now, again, that leaves 30% of them either I don't know or voting for a third party. And it's again, hard for me to imagine that people are more likely to defect from that third party or the I don't know to Joe Biden, it seems to me, than to Donald Trump. But maybe that's aspirational on my part. But that is my sense.
This backs the other polls that we'd seen about the frustration from voters under 35 about the lack of student debt. Biden essentially, in the piecemeal approach he's had when the Supreme Court shot down his student debt cancellation, has said, has canceled student debt, but it's largely for people who've been on time with their payments and have been paying for 20 years. That's when Biden deems you're worthy of cancellation. And it's a joke. And so that's why you're not seeing good numbers on that with younger voters, and he needs to address that quickly. And then I don't understand a little bit why some of these pollsters aren't being a bit more proactive in asking questions about how Biden's Israel support is affecting their enthusiasm, because I'm still not seeing much. It's mostly about abortion and student debt. I'm sure that those are the main drivers, but still curious about those numbers.
There was a poll that showed that more Americans think that foreign policy should be a top priority for the U.S. And 5% of the population says that the Israeli-Hamas war was mentioned, I should say, in issues that they cared about. So there's, I would imagine a small number of people who are going to be voting based upon that. But again, and this is the thing to keep in mind, Joe Biden won by a combined 40 some odd thousand votes over the course of 3 states. This is not about, it's very likely that Joe Biden is going to get 5, 6, 10 million more votes than Donald Trump in this election. And it's still very possible he could lose by 40,000 votes amongst 3, 4, 5 states, maybe, in terms of the Electoral College. And the thing to keep in mind here is Donald Trump in the past couple of weeks has already been talking about, well, maybe on day one, Insurrection Act. And it's not hard to imagine, in the wake of what happened in 2016, you had 1 million people marching before the inauguration, right? The idea that Donald Trump could become president and lose the popular vote by 5, 6, 7, 8 million votes, with the awareness that he's got pending criminal and civil trials against him, and the idea that people would then come out and protest, and the idea that he would then say, we're gonna invoke the Insurrection Act. And here's the example why. I mean, these are not fantastical things. Donald Trump was bandying this stuff around in the first term, and he had to worry about a second term. And he had an administration that was full of people who were there ostensibly to sort of help him tap the brakes on his, you're not going to have that same type of crew next time.
Reince Priebus was his, came in on day one, and there was a real effort to try to normalize him and make and rein in some of his worst instincts. And like, as you've said, he could maybe just be a warm body that signs into law all of the extreme, pro-industry, pro-wealthy people, agenda items for the Republican Party. But like, it became something different, obviously, towards the end. And there was so much turnover that now it's just going to be whoever Steve Bannon wants. They've already put out that plan that they're going to immediately on day one stack the administrative state with pro-Trump cronies. The lesson he's going to take from this, if he wins again, is I'm not going to waste time, and I'm not going to listen to the people who told me to slow down, because look what happened. They stole it from me anyway. If you go back to like 2019 and 2020, there was a real sense, I specifically remember, talking about this, that Trump really had a sense of like, oh, wait a second.
I've got more power than I thought I had.
Right.
And I can do stuff. And certainly, look what he tried to do with the election. So I think as we get closer to the election, this is going to become clearer. The only bright spot for Biden in this polling is that the sense of the economy that people have is improved. Economy is mentioned, top issue mentioned by 18 to 29-year-olds, 84%. Inflation, 39%. Personal finances, 38%. Foreign policy, 34% in that 18 to 29 age bracket. And there is a slight uptick in people's perspective of the economy, which is, going to be good for Biden if it continues. There's reason to believe that there's going to be, the Fed's going to cut rates in 2024, which should start to make the opportunity, to buy new homes, starter homes, to leave your homes a little bit easier to people, which theoretically could, lower rents a little bit. But prices are still high for people, particularly relative to wages, in the middle of the sort of economic spectrum. Low wage workers are doing better from a statistical standpoint than they were prior to 2020. But in the middle there, inflation has beaten out wages. So,
and let's also say too, housing has still
is crazy. Both in terms of like the rise in interest rates has actually sort of like, I think, increased prices in most areas because there's no inventory. Yeah. And rents are through the roof, and we just need more housing in this country. All right, let's turn to what's happening in Israel. We got a little bit of time. We'll do this. Biden just was this yesterday? Was it over the weekend? The Biden administration okayed a second emergency weapons sale to Israel. This is the second time in a month.
Bypassing Congress.
State Department said Friday that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken had told Congress that he made a second emergency determination covering a $147.5 million sale for equipment, including fuses, charges, and primers that is needed to make the 155 millimeter shells that Israel has already purchased function. Now, we spoke, and I can't remember who was her name from the
women's Ari Talani.
Yes, Ari Talani.
Women for Weapons Trade Transparency.
About this essentially like open door policy that Israel has to U.S. weapons caches in Israel. We have them all around the world, and Israel basically goes in, and it sounds like I don't know, like fill up your shopping cart. And, you got an hour to go in and fill up your shopping cart.
Supermarket sweeps.
The amount of synchronicity with like the U.S. military industrial complex can't be overstated. And I mean, I spoke to Anthony Lowenstein. That was, I think, one of our best ofs about that very notion, like that Israel's a nation of 9 million people or so. And it's one of the top 10 weapons manufacturers and wartime technology manufacturers in the world. That's a huge, in large part due to the billions of aid the U.S. has been providing there for so many years.
This sale got the attention of, and I suspect we're going to see more of this. I certainly hope so. Although there's been a lot of reporting essentially saying that Joe Biden is hell-bent on doing whatever Israel wants. Again,
he's a Zionist. He said it himself.
The idea that on one day, you read Joe Biden had a stern conversation with Netanyahu, saying he really wants Israel to pull back and become more targeted. And on the next day, here's a special gift of, a couple $100 million worth of weaponry. If this is an actual strategy by the Biden administration to get Israel to show restraint, it's not working. But I also think that it's really more of a strategy to make it look like they have no leverage.
Yeah, I mean, Kissinger dying, since the start of this is instructive, because if you read anything about Henry Kissinger's relationship with the press, it was always him talking to liberal reporters being like, Nixon would be doing a lot more if I wasn't in there, restraining him. It's just lip service.
But here's Tim Kaine wondering, why should the administration bypass Congress on arms sales to any nation? Bypassing Congress equals keeping the American public in the dark. And of course, the point isn't that, well, we heard about it. It really is about sort of like, we're not allowing the horror that at least a significant number of Americans are feeling with this, which is now like we have top Israeli officials, including Netanyahu. I mean, I don't want to say all but admitting, but basically admitting that this project is about ethnic cleansing.
Itamar Ben-Gvir, we have this. I mean, I'm not sure if you think this is worthwhile to play now, Sam, but like,
yeah, let's play this.
Yeah, this is. I can read the translation for the podcast audience. But this is Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security, an extremist in like the most, anodyne definition of his ideology, speaking on Monday about ethnic cleansing openly. The solution of encouraging the residents of Gaza to emigrate is one that we must advance. It's the right, just, moral, and humane solution. I call on the Prime Minister and his new Foreign Minister, who I congratulate on his appointment. Now is the time to coordinate an emigration project. A project to encourage residents of Gaza to emigrate to the countries of the world. Let's be clear, we have partners around the world whose help we can use. There are people around the world with whom we can advance this idea. Encouraging their emigration will allow us to bring home the residents of the communities near the Gaza border and the residents of the Gush Katif settlements. That's it. So that's just a very sanitized way to say that the Israeli government can and will engage with its partners in the world, and that seems to be the United States.
Blinken's flying around with our planes to try to facilitate this.
Yeah, in ethnically cleansing Gaza. So the point is just they either die by bombs, they'll starve to death, or you leave. And other nations I think he's probably referring to are like another top recipient of military aid being Egypt. But the problem for Israel is that the level of fury in the Arab world, I mean, like even Saudi Arabia, which was hoping to normalize relations with Israel, and they were working towards that under the Trump administration because it's in their best financial interest to do so, like they're having to be pulling back the reins because the amount of anger over Israel's the accused crimes of genocide now in the International Criminal Court by South Africa is like rightly leaving Israel and the United States completely on an island.
We should say that it's not just Ben-Gvir, who's one of the, like an avowed fascist, essentially, in the Israeli government. But Smotrich, who's the Minister of Finance, has said, we're not going to give any money to even Palestinians in the West Bank because I don't want it to get to Gaza. That guy was at one point a a settler in Gaza, has called for resettling Gaza with Israelis. He has also said we need to encourage immigration. I mean, do you remember when Mitt Romney said this kind of thing in this country? Just alluded to something like that, and there was a total outrage. And it was not backed up with the demolition of essentially, 80% of the housing of people and the near starvation of 50% of the people and the food deprivation for 98% of the people and the internal refugee status within Gaza of people who are already Gazan refugees to something like 90%. And this was reported a couple of days ago in the Israeli press. Prime Minister responded to member of Knesset Danny Danon, who stated that at the Likud faction meeting that, quote, we must establish a team that will take care of anyone who wants to leave Gaza for a third country. Is Israel doing this out of the goodness of their heart? Well, there's only going to be a couple of families, or this is the plan. We make it so that people want to leave.
It's the only humanitarian solution.
And we'll get to this case in front of in the UN court that's being brought by South Africa. But here is a clip from the New York Times. Just to give you a sense, and we should say that if you follow this stuff, whether it was about the command center under the Al-Shifa hospital, whether it was about the idea of who was bombing citizens, Gazans going down to the south, whether it was the use of white phosphorus, all these things, you have Palestinians making these claims, huge skepticism. 5 weeks go by, and then, an American newspaper or someone, some third party investigates it, and it's like, it turns out, yeah, that was right. Here is a New York Times investigatory video that shows what has been going on, not just in Gaza generally, but specifically. And how many times do we hear this? No other army in the world gives warning to people they're about to bomb like Israel does. No other army in the history of the world protects civilians like Israel does. And we should note there is nothing that compares to the rate of death of women, children, civilians. Nothing that we have at least in the past, 50 years.
2/3 of the dead so far are women and children. We say that not to say the men's lives are less valuable, but because Israel is claiming all men essentially could be Hamas. That's why they're stripping them naked and humiliating them in public.
And there's no data points that don't highlight the fact that this is a civilian slaughter. But here is more specifics. You'll recall, and it has been touted by Israeli officials over and over and over again, and anyone trying to defend this, that the Israeli government goes to such great lengths to protect civilians. This is important for you to see if you have bought into that.
This is an area in Gaza where for weeks civilians fled to find safety. These are 2,000-pound bombs, one of the most destructive munitions in Western military arsenals. When a 2,000-pound bomb detonates, it unleashes a blast wave and metal fragments thousands of feet in every direction. Sometimes, 2,000-pound bombs leave giant craters in the earth, like this strike in South Gaza in November.
Are you looking for my 4 children?
Munitions experts say 2,000-pound bombs are almost never used by the U.S. military anymore in densely populated areas. Israel says it must destroy Hamas above and below ground to prevent terrorist attacks.
Gaza,
like
the most
7th,
densely populated area in the world.
and claims it's taking extraordinary measures to protect civilians. But a Times investigation using aerial imagery and artificial intelligence found visual evidence suggesting Israel used these munitions in the area it designated safe for civilians at least 200 times. Our analysis indicates 2,000-pound bombs were dropped on a routine basis in South Gaza during the first 6 weeks of the war. And it suggests that even for those who followed every Israeli evacuation order and advisory, there was still no safety to be found in a war zone that's more dangerous for civilians than any in recent history.
There it is from the New York Times. So you can send that to your.
Yeah, good liberals can start to not stop both sidesing this. So it's a complete lie. Also, like, and the fact that they go so over the top to say no other country would take such great efforts. I mean, that's ridiculous on its face. But also, no other country in the world is in this situation. Like, the unique situation of Israel is so important for people to understand. This is not a conflict. It is a mass slaughter of an entrapped civilian population that has been entrapped there in Gaza, and we're not even talking about the West Bank at this point, for years and years, because Israel controls their borders, their water, their electricity, their way of life, everything. It is an open-air prison by every definition possible. So this isn't a war. And I can't, we've got to stop with the framing.
I mean,
because, it aids exactly that kind of propaganda that no other country would alert the people in the prison that we control that we're about to bomb them first. But wait, no other country really has this exact kind of situation, especially with the United States, the most powerful country in the world that has the biggest military budget 4 times over from the next country at their back. The uniqueness of the situation also underscores how barbaric Israel is.
And even if you want to do comparisons, like Russia's committing war crimes in Ukraine, killing civilians in their invasion at a slower pace, much slower than Israel is. So
yeah.
Here is a clip of the journalist Gideon Levy on Sky News. That's the British cable stuff. This is from Saturday.
He's written great stuff in Haaretz.
Yeah.
And it gives it sets up this other clip that we have as well. But the Israeli population polls somewhere in the 80s as to their desire to basically flatten Gaza, and they don't have a huge amount of love for Benjamin Netanyahu. But they're on the same page in terms of what they want to have happen in Gaza. Here is Levy saying that that number is probably sustained in part because they really don't have an idea of what is going on in Gaza at this point. And it's sort of difficult for us to wrap my head around that. But when you contemplate how half a population in this country can be in a media bubble that allows them to have a completely different narrative about some of the most basic facts, like this Civil War, for instance, it becomes clear because, as Levy says here, that like there is no room for dissent in Israeli society at this moment.
Is an overall support in Israel for continuing the war. The scenes that you are exposed in the UK and elsewhere are not shown here in Israel, systematically, not by the media, voluntarily, not by the media, but most of the Israelis are not exposed to what you are exposed. And therefore, it's much easier to support this war without having any moral doubts about the outcomes, And what you can see in international networks or in networks like yours is so horrifying that you really ask yourself for how long and how long will this support go on? Because the support, no critic about this war, no question marks, no resistance, no opposition, nothing. Israel supports this war from wall to wall. Yes, sure, the figures are published, but figures are only figures. It's, it's all about the framing. You can give figures, they might shock you, but Israel is really concentrated. It's its own sacrifice, its own mourning, its own care about the hostages, and all this is very understandable and human. But as long as you don't see the scenes, you cannot understand what is Israel doing to Gaza right now. And therefore, there is this apathy. And more than this, that even to pay some kind of empathy with Gaza, with the pain of Gaza, solidarity with Gaza, is almost criminal now in Israel, and you might be taken to court and to justice.
And to be clear, that's not hyperbole. You have, throughout this 2 months or 3 months it's been since October 7th, we've seen like Israeli teachers who have been called in and questioned about stuff they put on social media. We've seen this happen with journalists. I mean, all throughout Israeli society, you need to toe the line. And lastly, before we go to break, let's play this clip. I don't know if people are aware of this, but Israel is a conscript nation. You turn 18, you go to the army, unless you have some type of religious exemption or some other activity. But everybody goes to the army in the way that, like, you graduate junior high, you go to high school here.
Yeah. It plays a huge part in how militarized and radicalized the society is.
And this has always been the case. And it is also, I think, very much romanticized in Israeli society. Israeli society, to the extent that there's still a secular communitarian vibe in Israel. Much of the sort of like the strands of socialism that were there in the early days and expressed in kibbutzim life has been sort of the last vestige, last greatest vestige, I guess, to be more specific, is in the military. And so and I think like I saw some response to this, to the extent that I followed it over the course of last week, that what this guy was doing, it's easy to sort of like overpraise him. But I think it's also easy for us in the United States to not fully understand the implications of an 18-year-old publicly saying, I'm not going into the army because of these reasons. It is in a society that is 80% supportive of what is going on. And aside from that, the support for the military in Israel and going into this is
an act of bravery.
Yeah. Oh, yes. But I'm saying the expectations are, I don't think we have anything equivalent, frankly, in this country to to going into the military in the way that they do.
I mean, and the kid is 18. We're about to play a hero. And like this, I can't think of a time in your life when social pressure is more pronounced from your peers than when you're 18 years old. So it's the societal pressure and then like the social pressure and the romanticization of it. And the fact that all of his friends are probably getting conscripted as well. That's what just thinks like is so moving to me about this act of
and his
of
bubble,
defiance.
like he appeared on Hassan's Twitch stream, I believe, with like Noah Colwyn, and like that. When we had Ilan Pappy on, it talked about how like we need the messages to come from outside of Israel, because for the messages within are just, let's continue the bombing campaign. Maybe there's a problem with Netanyahu, and this kid has gotten those messages and is talking, converse with people. So being supportive of people like this kid standing up like this, I think is really important. Check this out.
Yeah, I think at that point he's heading off to jail. 30 days in jail.
Tal Mitnick is his name.
More people should follow him.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break, head into the first fun half of 2024, which is a great opportunity for us to remind you that it is your support that makes this show possible. We need members to be able to do what we do on a daily basis. If you listen to the show once, twice a week, become a member. Go to jointhemajorityreport.com and help this show survive and thrive. When you become a member, you not only get the fun half, you also get the free half free of commercials and allow us to really do the free half in many respects. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code, not coffee, tea, or chocolate. Darn it.
Just coffee.
Just coffee. It's right there in the name. Justcoffee.coop. Although I do think they have hot chocolate. But it's a fair trade. It's a co-op. It's a great business. And you get 10% off any of the coffees on that site by using the coupon code Majority. You can also get the Majority Report blend. Check it out. And our Discord, 10,000 people strong and growing on a daily basis. Great community, great resource for you, whether you're looking to organize your place of work or looking to organize other things with other people or talk about movies. Talk about just about anything in the Discord. MajorityDiscord.com. We have merch, shop.majorityreportradio.com, et cetera, et cetera. Emma, ESVN, what the hey?
Oh my gosh, lots to talk about. The college football semifinals last night we'll be speaking about. Also, Lamar Jackson officially solidifying himself as the MVP, why I think that's appropriate. Russell Wilson's getting benched, Flacco mania, the Lions controversial call as well at the end of that Cowboys game, youtube.com/ESVN show today.
Today.
Yeah, well.
Oh, you're going to do it today?
We're going to do it today because Bradley's going to be on his honeymoon starting tomorrow.
Right.
It?
Yeah, very Ennio Morricone honeymoon.
Yeah, I'll be going to an undisclosed location for an undisclosed amount of time.
I mean, it sounds, you don't want to give out your assassination coordinates while you're assassinating someone.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Matt, Left Reckoning.
Well, you can get a lot of Emma today because she's going to be our guest on Left Reckoning this evening.
Just
very
like
high noon,
Yeah.
but at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We're talking about, what we've sort of been
We don't
obsessing
know.
over the past month and looking forward to the future, maybe about watching clips. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning tonight.
Speaking of that, the Harvard president resigned.
Oh, she did?
Third time's the charm.
There you go. Folks, 646-257-3920. We'll see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back. Just want to degrade the white man. Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Dinner.
Yeah, or a couple of them, just put them in rotation.
DJ Dinner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
and the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the fun half. What is this? Her war against New Year, not ear. I'm not sure I follow that. Bug Chasing Sam says, from what I understand, the 30-day detention is indefinite. So as long as he continues to refuse to enlist, they'll continue to hold him in prison. We'll double check on that. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you, on that one. Should we do this? Let's